rises up from the water table to create this island in the middle, which perhaps is why it's given the name the Osirion. We have much later evidence of activity here.
In 1902, archaeologist Margaret Murray was excavating behind the temple of Seti I at Abydos when her team broke through into darkness. The smell hit them first. Ancient water, undisturbed for centuries, carrying the weight of something that should not exist. As torchlight swept across massive granite walls rising from black water, the voices stopped. No one spoke, because what they were looking at wasn't supposed to be there. No surface features had marked its location. No records described its existence. For centuries, possibly millennia, this colossal structure had remained buried and invisible. Beneath 50 feet of Egyptian sand, completely submerged in groundwater, sat a megalithic monument so massive, so impossibly constructed, that it broke every rule archaeologists thought they understood about ancient Egypt. This is the Osirion, and what scientists found beneath Abydos has never been adequately explained. Here's the deal. The Osirion is built from granite and limestone, blocks that weigh over 100 tons each. That's 16 African elephants, 50 automobiles crushed into a single stone. Someone quarried these blocks from mountains at Aswan, 200 kilometers to the south, dragged them across the desert, and positioned them with such precision that the joints remain remarkably tight after thousands of years underwater. The central hall alone measures approximately 30 meters long and 20 meters wide. Some individual blocks stretch over 5 meters in length. And officially, mainstream Egyptology says, Pharaoh Seti, I built this around 1290 BCE. But here's the catch. Seti Woin's temple sits directly above the Osirion. That temple is one of the most beautifully decorated structures in all of Egypt. Intricate hieroglyphics, delicate columns, sophisticated artistic programs representing the absolute pinnacle of New Kingdom craftsmanship.
Now notice the size of the stones that make up the Osirion. It was found in the 19th century or rediscovered.
It's famous for its king lists, those chronological records of pharaohs carved into the walls, and its exquisite bas-relief carvings, considered among the finest ever created. Now look at the Osirion, massive blocks, almost no decoration, stark architectural brutalism, no hieroglyphics explaining its purpose, no inscriptions dedicating it to Seti or any pharaoh, nothing connecting it to the elaborately decorated temple just meters away. Think about that for a second. We're supposed to believe the same pharaoh, during the same reign, built two structures that look like they come from completely different civilizations entirely. Dr. Robert Schoch, the Boston University geologist who shook Egyptology with his Sphinx water erosion analysis, examined the Osirion's weathering patterns. What he found made him question everything he thought he knew about Egyptian chronology. The erosion on those granite blocks doesn't match a structure that's 3,300 years old. The water damage is too extensive, the weathering too severe. It looks far, far older.
There's only so many ways to build with stone, but I think it's more than that. In some cases, they seem like they're being built very similar, with very similar techniques on a similar scale with small openings.
If you're loving this deep dive into hidden history, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next is going to blow your mind. The official explanation goes like this. Seti I built the Osirion using intentional archaism. He supposedly wanted it to look ancient and primitive to honor Osiris, god of the dead. He deliberately copied construction techniques from over 1,000 years earlier to create a symbolic connection with Egypt's distant past. Basically, they're asking you to believe that Seti I threw a costume party for a building. But here's where that explanation falls apart. Egyptian archaism was a real practice. Pharaohs sometimes referenced older artistic styles or used old-fashioned hieroglyphic forms to connect their work with ancient traditions. But archaism meant copying decorative motifs. It meant stylistic choices in art and text. It did not mean quarrying 100-ton granite blocks. It did not mean transporting them 200 kilometers across the desert. It did not mean constructing an entire megalithic complex using engineering methods that had been abandoned for over a millennium. That's not archaism. That's resurrection of dead technology. And get this, Seti I left no construction records for the Osirion, no dedication texts, no foundation deposits. For a pharaoh who meticulously documented every building achievement, who covered his temple with inscriptions celebrating his reign, this silence is deafening. It's not just unusual, it's suspicious. But here's where the evidence gets impossible to ignore. Because when you compare the Osirion to one specific structure, the timeline doesn't just crack, it shatters completely. The Valley Temple at Giza was built around 2500 BCE as part of the pyramid complex. Massive granite blocks, minimal decoration. The same architectural philosophy of overwhelming scale and stark simplicity. The same construction aesthetic that prioritizes imposing monumentality over decorative refinement. Place photographs of the Valley Temple and the Osirion side by side. They could be twins, same materials, same scale of blocks, same construction philosophy, same stark, almost brutal simplicity. The Valley Temple is dated 11,200 years before Seti I was even born. Engineer and author Christopher Dunn, who has spent decades analyzing Egyptian construction techniques with modern engineering principles, examined the precision of the Osirian stonework. His assessment was blunt. The construction quality matches Old Kingdom megalithic engineering, not New Kingdom temple building.
Again, we can see the shaping, the cornering of the stonework, the quartzite and granite. We can see the doorways have been beautifully carved out. And here we've got a good section of the roof.
The tool marks, the joint precision, the sheer scale of the blocks, all of it points to a period when moving 100-ton stones was standard practice, not an extraordinary exception. So, here's the question nobody in mainstream Egyptology wants to answer. Why would CDBA perfectly replicate construction techniques from 1,200 years earlier for a single project? Leave it completely undecorated, create no records explaining it, and never use those techniques again for any other structure? It's not that simple though, because the weathering evidence was about to turn this question into a full-blown crisis for Egyptian chronology, and what geologists found changes everything. When researchers analyzed the Osirion's blocks, they found erosion patterns that don't match the official timeline, extensive water damage, long-term environmental exposure, weathering far more severe than Seti's temple directly above, despite both structures supposedly being built at the same time and in the same location. If both are 3,300 years old, their weathering should be comparable. It's not even close. The Osirion looks centuries older, maybe millennia older. John Anthony West, the independent Egyptologist whose work on Sphinx erosion sparked decades of controversy and forced mainstream archaeology to confront uncomfortable questions, visited the Osirion and went quiet. What he saw confirmed his deepest suspicions. This structure belongs to a different chapter of Egyptian history, entirely, a chapter that official chronology refuses to acknowledge. Now, here's where the theories start to get wild. The Osirion sits at the water table. Its central chamber is permanently flooded, creating a haunting island effect, a raised platform surrounded by dark, still water. This wasn't accidental flooding from poor planning. The engineering suggests deliberate, intentional design. The foundations are built to handle constant moisture. The blocks are massive enough to resist hydraulic pressure. The joints are tight enough to prevent catastrophic structural failure. Think about what that means. Someone intentionally built a megalithic structure to exist permanently submerged. They understood groundwater levels with precision. They engineered foundations to resist constant water exposure. They created a building designed to last thousands of years underwater. Why would anyone do that unless they understood something we don't? Some researchers speculate the flooded chamber served a functional purpose far beyond mere symbolism. The acoustic properties of water-filled stone spaces are extraordinary. Sound behaves differently when surrounded by water. Resonance changes, frequencies amplify. Was the Osirion designed to create specific acoustic effects during ancient rituals? Was it a kind of machine? Egyptian creation mythology describes the primordial mound emerging from the waters of chaos at the beginning of time. The Osirion literally recreates this cosmic scene, an island rising from dark water, a physical representation of creation itself. But here's the unsettling question. Was this just symbolic representation, or were the builders encoding knowledge about something far more ancient, something we've forgotten?
The manifestation is carried out up to a point, but now the principle and the foundation has become potential.
The engineering required for permanent submersion while maintaining structural integrity for thousands of years exceeds typical New Kingdom construction by a significant margin. It's more consistent with Old Kingdom capabilities when Egyptian builders were at their absolute technical peak, constructing the pyramids and monuments that still defy complete explanation. And that peak, it declined. After the Old Kingdom collapsed, the ability to quarry and move 200-ton blocks seems to have disappeared from Egyptian civilization. Later dynasties built impressive temples with beautiful decoration, but they didn't routinely work with megalithic blocks. That capability, that knowledge, was lost. So here's what they're asking you to swallow. In the middle of the New Kingdom, over 1,000 years after megalithic construction supposedly ended, Seti I suddenly revived these abandoned techniques out of nowhere. He mobilized resources no other New Kingdom pharaoh ever attempted. He built a structure using methods his civilization hadn't practiced for a millennium. He left it completely undecorated, despite his documented obsession with elaborate artistic programs. And then he created no records explaining any of these unprecedented, extraordinary choices. Does that make sense to you? Because there's another explanation. And when researchers started connecting the dots, the implications hit like a physical force. What if the Osirion wasn't built by Seti I at all? What if it's genuinely Old Kingdom, or even older, built during the period when such construction was normal practice, then buried over centuries by sand and silt until it vanished completely? When Seti I built his temple at Abydos around 1290 BCE, he either discovered the ancient structure during construction or knew of its existence through old priestly records. He incorporated it into his complex, adding connecting passages and transitional elements, claiming the prehistoric monument as the symbolic tomb of Osiris. This single theory explains everything. The architecture matches Old Kingdom construction because it is Old Kingdom construction. The weathering shows greater age because the structure is genuinely older. The lack of New Kingdom decoration exists because no New Kingdom pharaoh built the core structure. The extraordinary depth resulted from millennia of gradual burial before Seti I ever arrived at the site. The hieroglyphic evidence supposedly connecting the Osirian to Seti I. It's sparse and found primarily in connecting passages and outer areas, exactly where you'd expect inscriptions if a pharaoh discovered an older structure and claimed it by building around it. The core megalithic hall bears no inscriptions definitively dating it to anyone's reign. Nothing. But here's the deal. Mainstream Egyptology won't touch this theory. The signs at Abydos credit Seti I, guidebooks place it firmly in the 19th dynasty. The official narrative remains locked in place. Yet privately, engineers who've examined the construction express serious doubts. Geologists who've analyzed the weathering patterns admit the evidence doesn't fit the timeline. Stone specialists who've studied the block placement see Old Kingdom techniques, not New Kingdom methods. The cognitive dissonance is real. The Osirian's deepest mystery isn't hidden in some undiscovered chamber or encoded in missing hieroglyphics. It's standing in plain sight, submerged in ancient water, waiting for someone to acknowledge what the stones themselves are screaming. Every massive granite block is evidence. Every precisely fitted joint is a question mark. Every architectural parallel to structures built 1,200 years earlier is a direct challenge that conventional Egyptology refuses to answer. One explanation requires accepting multiple impossible coincidences. Seti spontaneously reviving dead construction methods, mobilizing unprecedented resources, leaving no records, creating no decoration, and never using those techniques again. The other explanation requires revising one single date in Egyptian chronology. Which sounds more likely to you? The Osirian sits there today, partially accessible to visitors. When water levels permit, submerged in groundwater, its massive blocks unmoved for millennia, holding secrets that official archaeology won't address. Is mainstream Egyptology protecting a timeline they know is wrong? If the Osirian is older than they're telling us, what else has been buried? Not under sand, but under academic consensus. The stones don't lie. The engineering doesn't deceive. The weathering patterns tell their own story to anyone willing to listen. And that story says we've been dating Egyptian civilization wrong. The Osirion waits beneath Abydos, surrounded by the dark waters that ancient Egyptians associated with creation itself. It has kept its secrets for thousands of years, maybe longer. Perhaps it's time we started listening to what the stones are actually saying. What do you think? When was the Osirion really built? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to keep digging into the mysteries they don't want uncovered, hit that subscribe button and join us, because this rabbit hole goes deeper than anyone wants to admit.